Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to the FTX Cardano Blockchain Challenge Finals. I can't believe the day is finally here. We started this journey in April by sourcing the startups from emerging markets that are building on blockchain or the ones who are eager to integrate the Cardano blockchain into their products. Since then, we've managed to support the participants by providing them with access to knowledge, a network of experts, mentors, and investors, and spread the word about their amazing businesses through our networks. Today is the final day of the FTX Cardano Blockchain Challenge. Be ready to meet the winners of the challenge and enjoy the panel discussion on the power of blockchain in emerging markets, where our panelists will be discussing the impact blockchain can have in these markets, how we can effectively measure impact, and much, much more. Our brilliant speakers will also be taking questions, so please remember to use the chat to submit questions and network. And before our panel, we've got a few warm welcomes from you from FT, Cardano, and Seedstars. So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Pierre-Alain, co-CEO of Seedstars, to talk a bit about this collaboration.
Thank you, Noor, and the whole financial team for supporting this event. I think we really appreciate it at Seedstars. And on behalf of the whole Seedstars team, we really enjoyed the first 2 days of the event with the different workshops, mentoring, networking, and getting to meet with great entrepreneurs from around the world. So super excited and great energy here. Just as a reminder, our mission at Seedstars is to positively impact people's life in emerging markets through tech and entrepreneurship. And an event like this is really a great opportunity to once again showcase how disruptive and innovative technologies such as blockchain is impacting developing economies in which we operate. So throughout the last decade where we've been operating, we've had the opportunity to see blockchain go from really a nascent idea to now globally recognizable solution to many entrenched problems in global emerging markets. So cryptocurrencies, smart contracts, tokenization, DAOs, and other amazing use cases can provide new tools for enterprises and citizens in places where opportunities and infrastructures don't match those in the developed world. For example, in diverse countries in Africa and Asia, this technology has been put to use in banking, supply chain, property, land ownership, agriculture, and some other examples. So blockchain technology has not only helped to keep data more secure than traditional methods, but has also sped up transactions and reduced the cost associated with them. And we believe that's a great opportunity for the entrepreneurs and of course for all the other stakeholders. We believe that this technology has the ability to be more inclusive and secure as well. So we're quite thrilled to partner with Cardano to bring some of these potential use cases and benefits to individuals around the world throughout the programs or the investments that we are doing. Since first forming our relationship with Cardano, we've discovered that there are many parallels between Seedstars' goals and methods and Cardano's ecosystem. So for one thing, we're both focused on the same regions, global emerging markets, and we both aim to create an impact in these markets. So I think that's very important. That's really what drives us and what drives everyone in the team at Seedstars. Then Seedstars has always been an organization focused on experimentation, which is one of our core values. Similarly, Cardano has focused on experimenting a lot with new technologies and solutions to grow its ecosystem. Just for example, Project Catalyst is itself an experiment, and we're thrilled to also have the opportunity to use that platform as a way to bring new ideas to the table and partner together. So this experiment approach is really something I think that is common to both organizations. Lastly, in our aligned focus, our aligned focus on community, I think that Cardano has largely been a globally decentralized community-driven ecosystem. And since Seedstars' inception, we also have been a global and decentralized organization. I mean, we've been operating remotely since day one, and now we've built this community of over 250,000 people around the world that are interacting in a decentralized way as well. And I think this is also a very common point. Through the Project Catalyst, we also thrilled to come together to bring the FT and Cardano Blockchain Challenge to highlight the Cardano ecosystem, showcase some of the great innovative products that are currently built on Cardano blockchain, and introduce individuals building on other networks to Cardano. So we've had a great applicant pool to these events, and we're excited to announce that beyond this challenge, we will also be including many of these applicants in a 3-month acceleration program later this year. So we hope that these endeavors will contribute to promote blockchain technology and support new entrepreneurial projects on Cardano. So again, really excited about this project. And now let me hand over to you, Caitlin, from Financial Times.
Hi, everyone. I'm so delighted to welcome you to the FTX Cardano Blockchain Challenge Finals. We're so impressed with the talent we've seen so far and excited to see how you'll take this knowledge forward into the world. It's an amazing opportunity for the FT to co-organize this event and to be championing so many brilliant startups from around the world. This challenge really embodies what we're trying to achieve with FT Talent and more broadly at the FT. The mission of FT Talent is to empower bright minds from all around the world and create a hub of innovation where people can benefit from FT expertise. This is our second collaboration with Seedstars and our second opportunity to further our FT Talent mission, specifically with a focus on emerging markets, which has been really valuable to us. A big thank you to Seedstars and Project Catalyst for this collaboration, and a big thank you to all of your hard work, creativity, and innovation. Good luck to you all, and I would like to pass over to Chris Baird, Product Manager at IOHK.
Thank you very much, Caitlin and Pierre-Alain. So firstly, I'd like to offer a really heartfelt congratulations to all of this week's finalists. You've already competed at such a high level, and this is just testament to your hard work and your ambitious visions for making a difference in the world. Secondly, I'd like to offer a really warm welcome to today's audience. I hope that you're truly as excited about this stage of the competition as I am. As Caitlin mentioned, my name's Chris. I'm one of the product managers at Input Output, one of the founding contributors and software development companies that have created the Cardano blockchain and are helping to drive forward the Cardano ecosystem. I'm a product manager on Product Catalyst, which is Cardano's decentralized innovation fund. I'd like to also just thank a couple of individuals right now, which is Pierre-Alain, Harry, Daria, Zeb, Ade, Yoram, the whole of the Seedstars team, and everybody at FT Talent for such an incredible effort. Maybe many of you won't know this, but Project Catalyst is how innovation is driven forward in the Cardano ecosystem, whereby anyone can put forward a proposal requesting funding from Cardano's decentralized community-driven treasury. The community evaluates those proposals and then ultimately votes on which of those proposals deserve to be prioritized and receive funding from the Treasury. Seedstars were one of those proposers. They put forward a proposal in response to a challenge that actually I authored, the Accelerators and Mentors Challenge from a couple of funds ago. And it's just been fantastic to see that this competition in collaboration with the Financial Times has now come to this culmination, and it's so exciting to see where the results of this is going to go next. Who could have imagined that a top-tier accelerator program will be teaming up with one of the most recognized publishers in the world, and this has produced more than 200 applications, each with their own merits and virtues for their innovative blockchain applications, 50% of which have come from outside of the Cardano ecosystem already. So it's even more inspiring to learn that fresh ideas, perspectives, and expertise are now joining the Cardano ecosystem, which is all about open, permissionless participation and ultimately financial inclusion. So without further ado, I'd really like to wish all the finalists once again the very, very best of luck. I'm looking forward to seeing many of you and the winners and your great ideas coming to life over the coming months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Pierre and Caitlin, as well, for your warm welcomes. I hope you all feel very welcomed by our speakers. And now I'm so excited to pass over to Scott Cipollina, Financial Times digital assets correspondent, who will be moderating the panel on blockchain in emerging markets and introducing you to our panelists.
Thank you. Thanks, Noor. And welcome everyone to FT Talent's Cardano Blockchain panel. I'd introduce our speakers first. We have Dr. Mihaela Ulieru, who is IOHK Strategic Impact Officer. We have Pierre-Alain Masson, who's co-founder of Seedstars, and Mikhail Yagi, who is CEO of Ikigai Technologies. Welcome to all the speakers. I think it would be great to start off with just a bit of an introductory phase. If you could all tell us a little bit about your roles collectively and your experience in the blockchain industry.
Who starts? Probably who is asking,
Mihaela,
right?
why don't we start with you?
Okay, so yes, thank you so much. First of all, I wanted to extend my thanks for the invitation. It's a great honor. I am more than thrilled to be here. I'm a great fan of Seedstars. And as I mentioned probably before when I interacted with Pierre-Alain. So just a little bit about myself. So strategic impact leader, what does that mean? Well, impact is always connected to a theory of change, right? So what change do I want to effect in the world? I also founded the Impact Institute for the Digital Economy. It's all absolutely aligned on one side with the Seedstars mission, which was presented by Pierre-Alain before, as well as with Charles Hoskinson's vision for Cardano. And that is to redo and rebuild the virtuous rebuilding of the systems of the world, if I may say it in this way, to enable people to take full control of their lives. And what does that mean? It means to liberate them from the counterproductive systems, centralized systems, under which innovation, the innovative spirit, exactly what we witnessed here with the entrepreneurs, the innovative spirit is strangled. But of course, before I carry on too much, I would like to stop here and invite the others to introduce themselves. I believe I will have the opportunity to give details in the next minutes.
Thanks for that, Mihaela. Pierre, how about we hear from you next?
Yeah, sure. So on our side at Seedstars, I think we've been following in the beginning from far what was going on in the blockchain sector. And however, we have seen an acceleration in the past, I would say 2 years, on projects coming with these technologies. I think that the applications that we are seeing are still very early stage in the markets where we operate. But however, we see a big potential here. So our experience now is to answer the question is mainly looking at deal flow, and we're starting now to consider investments in these companies. That's on one side, and we are also launching incubation programs soon, hopefully around this topic, as well as acceleration programs. And finally, we also discussing about a possible fund just focusing on backing companies with these kind of technologies. So that's a bit our experience so far. As an organization, like I said, DAO, which is also the way I would say everything is organized on blockchain. It has been the core of our philosophy since day one. So in that sense, from a philosophical point of view, we are very very close to blockchain since day one. But yeah, so these are, I think, the two elements on organizational point of view and from an investment perspective, our experience with blockchain so far.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Pierre. Michael?
Yeah, so my experience with blockchain goes back since 2011 or 2012 when I first got first Bitcoin, and really what was super interesting is what the kind of things it could enable. So I kind of followed the market through the ebbs and flows, ups and downs, all the crashes, exchange things that happened, but it really wasn't until 2020 or around there that I started to get a little bit more interested on becoming a builder and trying to be one of the people that's building the use cases. So last year or so is when we started Ikigai Technologies, and that's where we're focusing on using Web3, kind of helping redefining the way we think about work as well, and how we work together is what I'm personally really passionate about and trying to tackle with EPI.
Good stuff. Thanks everybody for those intros. I suppose it would be a great place to start at a high level if we take a bit of a bird's eye view on the blockchain industry. There's a lot of talk these days about NFTs or about the metaverse, and of course, different blockchains across various ecosystems. What would you say at a high level would be the most prominent use case that's been established in the tech so far? How about we reverse course? Michael, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, so I think probably going back to its roots, the first use case, probably the most mature, is it at its core, it basically provides infrastructure and organization without the need for like middle parties. So kind of the obvious first use case would be the financial realm. So that would be what people a lot of think of as Bitcoin. But really, I think it's starting to lower the barrier as well as to collaborate because blockchain acts as an intermediary and a trust holder. So that you can start going into things like property ownership or automatic resolutions through something called smart contracts. And this is what really is starting to power more advanced use cases like NFTs, where people can start doing royalties or DeFi and things like that. So I think we're starting to see the tip of some of the really interesting use cases come out and through NFTs and DeFi.
Brilliant. Pierre, how about your thoughts next?
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. And just to now come back to emerging markets, where we're focusing on, I think there are interesting companies that are coming out. I could mention Goldfinch, for example, that is trying to make the bridge between the crypto investors and basically lenders in emerging markets. And I think that is a very interesting example of blockchain, of trying to provide, to use technology and provide capital to the ones the most in needs in these markets. So I agree that fintech in general through blockchain is a very interesting use. In the same line, we are typically very much looking now at working on but that's still not yet on the market. So it's not the current best use case, but hopefully will be a good use case in the future. Would be typically still around that tokenizing income share agreement, for example. So this is something, if you look at the needs in these markets around financing, education financing, is pretty big. And unfortunately, the current impact investors are not addressing this topic. And we believe that blockchain could be a big unlocker for these kind of solutions. So I think these are two examples, I think, that for me are very interesting and could unlock great impacts in these markets.
Brilliant. We'll circle around. Mihaela, your thoughts on the same question?
Yes, for me, in alignment with the theory of change, which I mentioned, and freeing people from the bureaucracies, verification, certification, and validation on blockchain, I think they open this possibility, which is tied to the DAO, which, as you mentioned. So for me, it is important to replace the bureaucratic stamp, which is like physical stamp, in which I have to stay in a long line and I depend on the bureaucrat, to replace that with an elegant electronic stamp on blockchain, which can be transparent. And then I have everything, the certificate I have with me, everybody can verify it. So it is practically disintermediation of the counterproductive processes in governance, which, if I can take it one step further, is my dream of enabling the dismantling of the administrative class. So viva the DAO, if I may.
Thank you for that, Mihaela. I think I actually would like to stick with you at first for this next question, which is relatively similar, but perhaps there's a little bit of nuance to be had. There's been, broadly speaking, about 13 years worth of innovation in this space so far. What would you consider to be the most, in the spirit of impact, which you mentioned earlier in your opening statements, what would you say has been the most impactful innovation that we've seen to date in the industry?
And of course, 13 years, yes, I mean, since Satoshi, right? I think that's what you mean. The thing is, it's, to me, there are two of them. Yes, and I will just mention the second one, which is, I don't know if more recent, but I think more recently is now taking flight. And that is the self-sovereign identity, this new trust framework, because it kind of ties in with the DAO and the sovereignty principle, the empowerment that blockchain brings. So the idea is that by having full control over credentials, as I mentioned before, yes, I have my credential to myself. I have my birth certificate from birth to myself, and of course, with the possibility to reveal it or not when necessary. I also have control of my land ownership, any other kind of ownership. So these are innovations which are amazing. I mean, I really do not depend anymore on any bureaucrat, on a centralized power to have control over my life. So I think this is also what Charles Hoskinson's dream with Cardano is, to enable that kind of sovereignty for the individual to take full control of their lives. But if we are to go historically, in my opinion, the first great innovation in blockchain was the smart contract, which is also enabling new economic models that are more equitable and are empowering people. Of course, I can speak much more about this, but I think my co-panelists have also a lot to say.
Good stuff. Thanks for that, Mihaela. Well, Pierre, how about we roll with you next, and then we'll circle back to Michael.
Yeah, no, I think DAO is indeed one of the most impactful innovation. It's interesting because I'm based in Switzerland, and as some of you might know, in Switzerland we have a direct democracy system, and as well as a representative democracy system. And I think so. We're very used to basically vote every 2 months on any topic. And that's interesting because when we are discussing about with some blockchain organizations on how to organize that, we often refer to how it is currently organized in Switzerland. I think I'm not saying that this is the best political system here, but this is a very interesting one, at least, that has been experimenting with this direct democracy concept. And that's where I think that blockchain is now trying to really democratize that in other parts of the world, which is challenging also in some places that might not be used to see this kind of way of governing, of basically. Are more used to, I would say, more traditional top-down hierarchical organization. So I think that would be, for me, the most impactful innovation, these decentralized, autonomous way of taking decisions and really involving people and democratizing decisions. We're not there yet, honestly. I think there are still a bunch of things to be figured out. And we could inspire ourselves from systems like the ones we've got here in Switzerland, for example. Taking some ideas, I think, could be also relevant. But yeah, so DAOs for me would be the answer.
Thanks, Pierre. Michael, how about we round off that question with your thoughts next?
Yeah, I guess I have a pretty similar answer to Dr. Mihaela in that Bitcoin kind of showed you can go to emerging markets and things like that with transaction payments and kind of empower upcoming countries and things like that through a new kind of type of finance. But what is really also important is identity, and which is to say that to have that data follow you around. Right now it's really time consuming. There's a lot of bureaucracy and it's very costly to manage your identity because you go through a lot of centralized entities, and those things are extremely important because it helps you function as a society. But with the new mention of blockchain, you can start decentralizing a lot of this, and that's also helps process and things like that. So your identity becomes more portable, it becomes more private, it's more secure. You can tell people what you do or don't want people to do with it. So this really enables a lot of things, including empowering DAOs, because your identity can have some sort of reputation with it, and you may go to be a part of another DAO, but your reputation follows you because you can prove that you have this kind of reputation that follows you that you built up over the years. So really, it's about like kind of redefining and bringing power back to people and making it really easy and portable. And a lot of that is your identity.
Brilliant. Thank you. And sort of a useful segue from that question going forward in terms of impact. Another narrative, if you will, that we hear often in the blockchain space is information sharing. A lot of companies have incorporated private blockchain systems for data management, for information sharing. But of course, the majority of blockchains that we see today are public blockchains, permissionless blockchains. I'm interested to know your thoughts on what role those kinds of blockchains specifically can play with regard to information sharing. How about, Pierre, we start with you this time.
So it's a whole question about transparency, right?
Yeah.
That you want to address. I think it's very interesting because we are, we've been in this era of social media where everything is public and you can find anything about almost everyone. And on the other side now, there is this huge trend on going the exact opposite direction where everything needs to be private. And in parallel, you have this public blockchain coming up. So I think that's what we want to be public, what would need to be public are the processes, like, for example, decision-making process, while some things, of course, will need to remain private I think for obvious reasons. And so I think it's finding the right balance on what needs to be public versus what needs to remain private. Again, to talk about DAOs, for example, the way decisions are taken and basically having a clear transparency here could be very interesting and very relevant in a lot of markets where we operate, where corruption obviously is a big topic. So if you're able to provide more transparency to the public on these kind of, let's say, political decisions, for example, or other similar decisions, I think that could be very relevant. Now, using transparency to track citizens on what they own, for example, might be another tricky topic. So I think we need to be very careful on where we put the line. And I think this will be one of the biggest debates over the next couple of decades on this privacy versus public domain.
Yep. Thanks for that thoughtful response there, Pierre. Mihaela, how about we go to you next?
Yes, I mean, I can only say ditto to what Pierre mentioned with regard to the balancing between privacy and transparency. When it comes to public blockchains, even here at the competition, we had companies which, for example, for the pharma, counterfeit, and others, they mentioned that they use private blockchains. I am a bit concerned about that, yes, because then they can report whatever they want. The thing with accountability, and which is brought to the fore by the public blockchains, is really important, because in that case, we can really verify that the drugs are the right ones and not cheaper ones, which the pharma companies are selling more expensive, so they can make more money. This is just a possibility. I'm not saying they're doing that, but how can I know if it's private blockchains? Very similarly, and that is an issue which was raised in Stockholm, at Stockholm 50 last month, when I attended the 50 years anniversary of the United Nations Earth Day. And it was revealed that actually billions of dollars are being spent by governments from public money, that is from our own taxes, in form of perverse incentives, so that actually they are funding our own extinction, and we have no idea. So it's like this greenwash, yes, in form of ESG, but in fact they are funding the wrong things. And there is this corruption which Pierre Alain mentioned, which is impossible to verify and keep accountable without private blockchain and transparency. Of course, we need to mitigate that. And technologies, and Cardano is actually working on that. We hope to announce it pretty soon. A solution to actually mitigate privacy and accountability.
Brilliant. Michael, any final thoughts on that question?
I'm excited to see what the announcement is for Cardano. Yeah, I think private blockchain is a little bit of a kind of a hard idea for me to grasp, because part of it is, if it's private, is it, there's still that ledger where you could see a history, but you still have to trust a middleman, which would be Facebook or Google or a pharmaceutical company, which basically ultimately still has ownership over that data. If data is seen as a resource, which is kind of a popular idea, is that data is a really valuable resource that you want to own, then a public blockchain can be seen as like decentralization of that resource or power. So it really, public blockchain brings a lot of fair usage and ownership back to your data, which is kind of that missing piece. And I think how we talked about your identity, so identity management systems over SSI and things like that, is kind of like that missing piece where you can't have everything be public. So you need that extra layer of security so that your data isn't just everywhere for people to see, but you have a way to still access your data. So I think we're still a little ways away from before we can have public blockchain used for a lot of these things. But so it's nice to see the kind of intermediary step of the public. People still using
yes.
private
And if I can take on from here and just clarify, because I agree with you that it's not easy. However, the sovereign has come up with self-sovereign identity principles, and one of them is privacy and minimal disclosure. So privacy doesn't mean complete blackout. And what does that mean, privacy and minimal disclosure? As they say, a sovereign identity ecosystem shall empower identity rights holders to protect the privacy of their digital identity data and to share the minimum digital identity data required for any particular interaction. And this is what I mean. Just because of your impatience with the upcoming announcement, we're working on such enabling technologies. And with regard to the transparency, of course, the other side of the coin, it empowers identity rights holders and all other stakeholders to easily access and verify information necessary to understand the incentives, rules, policies, and algorithms under which agents and other components of the ecosystem operate. So there are technological tricks that can do that. And of course, I hope we will also release some white paper. Speaking of this balance, privacy and transparency, of course, we cannot give out everything at this stage. But just so you know, we are working on this. And I believe many others in the blockchain community are working on balancing this privacy, minimal disclosure with transparency.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, everyone. Mihaela, we'll stick with you, I think, for the next question, because it's closely related to what we've just discussed in terms of the tension, perhaps, between transparency and privacy. Broadly speaking, what social good is there to be had with regard to information sharing on blockchains? And I suppose the inverse of that question is, what are the risks?
Yes, I mean, obviously, the social good is pretty obvious. Yes, I mean, and I gave it as an example. Yeah, so I keep what I call the monsters, the centralized monsters, accountable. Yes, and then I can see what they are doing. So as I gave the example with the ESG, yes, this environment example, in which from my own taxes I'm funding through the government, because I don't have any say in it until the DAO voting, which Pierre Alain was mentioning, will be in effect. So I'm funding my own extinction through perverse incentives, and I don't have any power over it. Well, with accountability and transparency, I will have a say and hopefully the power to stop it. However, it is easy to step into the other side, the big brother effect, which, the social credit in China is an obvious example. So how do we actually mitigate that is, again, yes, the issue. But it's not only about the technology examples which I gave before with the privacy and minimal disclosure. A very big issue is the power of governments and their willingness to embrace it. And I will give you I can give you many examples, but I think one which is really probably the funniest is related to the fact that governments, whatever government mean, and that's why I say the bureaucratic class, yeah. So there are many who do not want to change, who do not want to give up the power of the physical stamp because they will lose their job. So there's this class which actually perpetuates everything and obfuscates the reality. For example, it would be so easy to have credentials on blockchain, which are transparent and verifiable, to the extent to which I want to release it, yes, and to show to everybody that, yes, I do have a PhD diploma, but I don't have to show it to everybody unless it's necessary, yes, unless I really want to brag about it. But how it's done today, for example, during COVID, because it needs to be stamped and signed physically, letters were sent to professors. So let's say I have a PhD exam and I have a professor from France, one from the US, one from Asia, and they are on the committee on Zoom. And then they have to, normally they would have been brought together, flown in and be in the exam with the examinee, and then sign the resolution. But on Zoom, they could not sign it. So what they did was mail a letter. Let's say I'm one of the professors. I receive a letter. It has many envelopes, like, nested in each other. The first one has that letter which I have to sign, and another envelope in which I put it after I sign it, and with the address of the next professor. As the next professor, the same process repeats. They sign this, and another envelope they find in their envelope, so they send it to the next professor. I mean, this is something which is unimaginable. How easy it would be with credentialing on blockchain. Yeah, that's why I'm saying this is really unacceptable. And having the power to reveal what I want, yes, and as they say, privacy and minimal disclosure, as well as the transparency when it's needed, is something which is absolutely doable and necessary.
Thank you.
Sorry that I really extended myself with this answer, but
no, that's okay. That's
I was
fine.
taken aback when this happened. Yes, because I'm also a professor, so.
That's all right. Thank you, Mihaela. How about Pierre? We go to you next.
Yeah, I think we should not be also utopists and be very pragmatic in the way we approach this. In the sense of when you're giving, here we're talking especially about DAO. There are other cases, but in our use of blockchain, but here we're talking about information sharing. I'm thinking especially about the decision-making process that is decentralized, and so giving the power to people to vote on different things. And here, I think that's, if I take the same example of Switzerland, I think what we've got here typically in this country is only possible because there is a context. So the context is, for example, that the education level is pretty high in the country, which allows then to I think take better decisions. Another example of the context is the media components, which are I think try to be pretty neutral in general. I'm not saying, again, I'm not utopist here, but I think in general, I think in comparison to some other countries, there's a pretty good neutrality in the way information is shared. And so when you are voting or taking decisions, I think you are well informed, and again, you have the right educational background and tools in order to take these informed decisions. That's for me one example. I will take another example that someone that went in a private company went to try also to go for full transparency mode, which is Ray Dalio, that you might be familiar with from Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge fund worldwide. And he wrote this book called Principles, and he talked about these concept of transparency, not necessarily using blockchain, but more the concept of transparency and the fact again that at some point he needed to put some rules because not everyone was able. So the vote of one person might not be equal to another one, just because maybe of the experience or the background of that person. And so these are considerations that you need to take into account. The point I'm bringing here is that even though blockchain might allow that and that kind of voting and that give these kind of rights, I think we need also to be very, very pragmatic, and I think it's much more complex than just one person, one vote, typically. And this is also what we're seeing. So when we are discussing with companies trying to implement DAOs, for example, that's one of the challenge that they're facing. So one of the risks to answer the question is this for me is being a bit too utopist about it and not taking into account all the context when we are putting in place these kind of systems.
Yes. And if I may just mention, because now you mentioned voting, yes, and in the context of privacy and transparency, that is really critical. I mean, it may be that I really don't want to reveal who I am if I'm voting, right? So I'm not then ostracized by those who may win and I didn't vote for them. So there are a lot of things which maybe are or are not yet solved, but I think this balancing of privacy and transparency has to solve. Including voting, the voting problem.
Yeah, thanks. Michael, how about your thoughts next?
Yeah, I think a little bit of an alternative point here or viewpoint is we think at IOHK a lot of what blockchain is good for is it's a ledger for transactions and things like that. But what's kind of a missing piece is there's a lot of transactions that happen, but there's even more ideas that are floating around. And a lot of what's can be captured is creating a place for those ideas to be stored. So having like a creative economy of ideas, and blockchain can link them through like a graph and things like that. So we're actually at IOHK, we're building like a layer 2 solution where we can capture these ideas and try to empower a community to collaborate basically and store this data. So we think like ideas have a lot of value and they're refined in a lot of ways, and they become ultimately, you see the end product, but you don't see how you got there. You want to know how an idea, a movie started, where the seed of the script happened, where are those ideas, people bouncing ideas around the room. A lot of those things in the digital world are on forums and things like that. So you might see someone start with an idea on a forum and another one say turns those idea into, adds lyrics to it, and then another entity comes in and plays some music over it, and then someone adds extra drums or bass, guitar, and then a completely different entity adds album art to it, and then all of a sudden you have a piece of art, right? And so how do you track who contributed to that in which way, and especially if these things happen in different websites or platforms, and then if it's streamed, eventually it might become monetized. So how do you reward these individuals? So the data itself has to be decentralized and interoperable, and you have to be able to see where those ideas came from to really have this vision of a community that can collaborate really closely with each other. And really that's what we think is going to be a nice plus that's coming out of this decentralized and blockchain technology, is empowering these things to happen. So that's what we're focused on. That's the good side. I guess when you ask what's a risk, probably security is like what a lot of people are trying to solve for when you're decentralizing all this stuff. It's going to be how do you keep that data secure if it's a lot of owners maybe are storing this data or on the blockchain. Are you able to redact things or delete? Maybe that's a feature you don't want people to go in and say like, oh, this thing never happened. But if there's something that's maybe a leak where you didn't want everyone to know about it, how do you prevent against that? So maybe you say it's always on the blockchain, but it's encrypted, so only certain parties have the keys to view it. So that might change in real time. But yeah, that's something that's kind of an unknown or a risk, right?
Brilliant. Michael, we'll stick with you for now for the next question. How would you say we could track, one of the narratives of this conversation is impact. How would you say we could best measure the impact of these social goods? Or would you say that perhaps these are things that still broadly exist in theory? Or, are there, real examples we can reach out and touch that can be useful in terms of measuring that impact?
Yeah, I guess I'll continue talking through the viewpoint that I was discussing of a lot of this data sharing. I think the one way that we can measure it is data is really like a valuable resource that a lot of companies are kind of trying to hold so very close to them. And one way we can track impact is if these things are actually being decentralized, the power should be going somewhere, and that data, the value, there should be emerging markets around your ownership and your data and things like that. So there should be kind of a new industry or new market about your data, and you should be ultimately getting paid or having control of what your data is. So ad companies and things like that should be paying back some of the profits to servicing your data, and that should be going to you, and you should be able to have access to control it. So to me, we could track the impact by how many of these kind of things are popping up, right? When we're talking about data in particular.
Brilliant. Mihaela, we can turn to you next.
I think this is a question which has to be answered in context, yes, because so what kind of impact? Is it environmental impact? Is it social impact? So if it is environmental impact, the United Nations has come up with science-based targets, which everybody is now adopting. And again, the question of transparency comes into picture, because the point is, what do we report, right? So in this regard, there are many startups right now, even building on Cardano and on Catalyst. So I'd mention OpenLitter, for example, or UPF coins. So what OpenLitter is doing, so it is an app which enables citizens, so they call it citizen science, to report on pollution and so keep cities accountable, or whoever would be accountable, governments accountable for doing something about it, because they pay from our taxes. They should actually take care of that. And also engages people to clean places which they find polluted as much as they can. Or UPF coin, which is actually another application which keeps companies accountable and rewards them for giving up the use of plastic. Like, for example, Canada today announced that they are all for removing single-use plastic from all the businesses. This is wonderful. And such effects on government, citizen science, and such initiatives can have. I think that's how I would measure it. When a government makes such a decision at the pressure of citizens. So this is the reverse of power, which blockchain is enabling. This is the empowerment. That is how we actually get over the tipping point in favor of, with the people. And also when it comes to social impact, of course, banking the unbanked, yes, enabling the small farmer. There were some companies, even in the startup show here at Seedstars, that presented such applications. So enabling the small farmers through new credit models, new financial models. They are completely disconnected from the financial system. Let's say they are unbanked. So how can they start a business if I find a way to give them credit and to actually pay the supplier? For example, I want to sell organic fruit. The supplier is a small farmer, but I cannot buy from them because I'm unbanked. So if I get some money on credit, let's say, from from a new entity, which is a financial entity, then I can buy that organic fruit and sell it and make money for myself and pay also some interest to those who gave me and build credit in that way. So this is social impact. So how many such businesses are being formed? This is a measure for that, yes. And how many businesses are enabled and how much people's lives is enabled through that. So it's not an easy question to answer if we judge by results.
Sure. Pierre, how about you round us off?
Yes, so I think that indeed impact. Impact definition and impact measurement is very tricky. That's the biggest question of all people in the impact world. Despite the fact that indeed UN might be defining some criteria. And for environmental issues, sometimes might be easier to measure it. When it's coming down to social impact, it becomes a bit more tricky, and you need to look project by project. And that's where data is interesting because it provides transparency. But I think also that impact could be subjective, meaning that it depends on, typically our mission is to impact people's life, and we would love to hear from the end beneficiaries. Were we really able to, because we have our impact reports on how many people basically we've been, for example, educating, or how many people receives health services from the companies that we've been supporting, or that kind of things. But in the end of the day, it's very difficult to get real feedback from the end beneficiaries. So that's where I think blockchain could be very interesting. If we assume, so that could be an hypothesis that impact is subjective, and we're able to give a voice to the beneficiaries of that impact to know if it was indeed impactful, I think that would be very interesting. And why does it matter? Because now you have more and more typically impact funds that are being compensated based on the impact that they're having. But the way they're doing it is by basically a lot of them are using their own metrics. So of course, you can have external auditors, etc. But you rarely you rarely involve the end beneficiaries. So if there is a way through some kind of a decentralized system through blockchain to involve the beneficiaries, for example, and maybe some other stakeholders to have a more or a better overview, I would say. That would be a very interesting way to measure impact. Again, is in a subjective way, and the subject being mainly the beneficiaries. I think that for me would be an interesting angle. I haven't seen something like that yet. And that's maybe something someone is certainly working on that. But that would be, I think, quite a great advancement if we were able to move in that direction.
Brilliant. I'd just like to pivot briefly to emerging markets, and I'd be interested to hear the panel's thoughts on the role the blockchain can play in onboarding players to emerging markets. How about, Michael, we start with you this time.
Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of emerging markets in the blockchain space, like the NFT marketplaces and crypto writ large. How do we look at the role that blockchain tech specifically plays in onboarding some new players to those emerging markets?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I think blockchain has a little bit of a ways to go in terms of usability. But because at the end of the goal, you want the benefits of blockchain without having to have a lot of this overhead knowledge of how to interface with, the wallets, to get into the exchange and things like that. People are familiar with, what it takes to buy an NFT, right? So I think really the question should be like, how do we get people to adopt it without knowing that it's blockchain, right? Because if you have to know it's blockchain, then something is a little awry there. So I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but that's just kind of the way that I see it.
No. Thank you for that, Michael. That's great. Pierre, how about we circle back to you for this one? And as well, something that was mentioned at some point during the panel was, the idea of banking the unbanked. Of course, there are many folks who are unbanked that live in parts of the world that maybe don't have ready access to the internet. So that's obviously a challenge for onboarding folks into emerging markets. How does the blockchain industry wrestle with that kind of tension?
Yeah, I guess it's like every new tech. One of the issues that we're seeing, and I think Michael mentioned a very good point, which for me is around education. We see such a big gap on what's happening basically in Silicon Valley or on developed markets and what we can see in emerging markets. Especially in terms of education, knowing that it's a pretty advanced technology, and usually emerging markets might not be developing these core technologies, but might be more users, and they find interesting applications on the ground. But if they're not educated around this, I'm talking about typically the entrepreneurs in that sector. I think that could be a challenge to come back on and so by the way, we are working on this and trying to have more and more education programs to help entrepreneurs at getting more familiar with these kind of technologies. Now on the thing on unbanked, I think so there are already now a lot of startups that have been addressing this topic, and I think that now blockchain is just a new technology that can facilitate some of the transactions. I don't see it necessarily as a big disruptor in that sense. However, where I see the value here is like typically the company that I was referring to before, Goldfinch, that is making this gap between I would say the capital markets in developed markets and the needs in emerging markets, and basically using the way they design it and trying to build this bridge between these two markets is, I think, a very interesting approach to help the unbanked. So that's where I see maybe capital access facilitated through basically simplifying the whole value chain in this sector. It could be a great application.
Brilliant. Mihaela, same question?
Yeah, so it is a big challenge. And obviously, since we have a big operation in Africa, which is led by John O'Connor, our Africa Operations Director, I've been talking to John a lot because obviously as a strategic impact leader, his work is making the highest impact for our company in the world, at least to date. So one of the big challenges is indeed, yes, if they do not have the technology or internet. So we came up with solutions around that, like, for example, a barcode on paper. Yeah, so then that is a link to a wallet somewhere, and then they can pay with that, and it's done automatically at the point of sale. There are other solutions which others have developed. For example, people can pay with their face. So they get credit, as I mentioned, similarly as I mentioned before, they get credit, and then they can pay from that credit to get something. Yes, they can get the organic fruit, then they sell it, they start their business. So you can go around the technology, but an extreme case was developed by the founder of Sarafu Network, which is now quite a well-known network in Kenya. So he built some years ago, well, maybe even before blockchain, because people in those communities, very poor communities, didn't have any technology. So they started from zero with colored paper, and they created their own economy, and the colored paper had different denominations as currency. And then let's say one person was painting and receiving this colored paper, and then he was paying with it for a person who was giving them fruit. So a sort of barter, but still an economy with some sort of currency. So we can go around that and create new ways. However, I'm really hoping that we can help the rest of the world, the rest of those without internet. Yes, not only the unbanked, to bridge that technological divide as well. And I'm working on advising several governments, as you know, the president of the Impact Institute for the Digital Economy, as much as possible, yes, to bridge that. I'm working with the United Nations, with the United States government to enable that, and of course with companies. As you know, many of them are putting balloons to enable the internet, and so on and so forth.
What regulatory concerns should we have when it comes to onboarding folks that are perhaps unbanked or in otherwise perhaps inexperienced with the world of finance generally? What concerns should we have from a regulatory perspective when it comes to onboarding these folks to emerging markets? How about Pierre? We start with you this time.
I guess it's the privacy issue that we mentioned before. I think that's definitely I think a big concern. We should be very careful about that. Yeah, for me that would be the biggest one.
How would you say companies / actors in the space can mitigate this risk?
So I said in the intro that we are very much about experimentation. Unfortunately, I think this is, and I know this is tricky, but this is experimenting maybe on initially with smaller batches in different contexts, etc., to see what works, what doesn't. Trying to also identify what are the possible issues on operating in a certain way. So our approach in general when facing these kind of complex challenges would be trying to go through experimentation. And so taking different angles, different initiatives, which I think is also what Cardano is somehow doing with again, Catalyst is a good example where you have different actors trying to launch different ideas, research projects, etc., to trying to see what works, what doesn't, what sticks, what doesn't. So that's a bit how I would approach it. Yeah, I think that again it's fact-based and I think that would be the best approach because it's very difficult for me to predict how people would be reacting and what are the possible issues before implementing something. Okay, it's difficult to plan everything in advance.
Yeah. Michael, how about you next on that same question?
Yeah, I think that's a hard one. So like new actors, that'd be like you mentioned, like unbanked. That would be new users, startups, or investors, right? Like that's what you mean by new actors. Yeah, I think a lot of it is regulation is really trying to stop a lot of these ecosystems from collapsing, right? So a lot of people are suspects or victims of putting money into these ecosystems, but they're not fully aware of how it works, or investing in products that maybe don't have the best intentions and things like that. So there is a lot of reason for it, but I think what a lot of people are scared for is over-regulation and stifling innovation and progress by regulating too much. So that's something that's really hard for me to answer. But I think it also, I am excited for a little bit of a middle ground because a lot of projects are trying to monetize, maybe putting the cart before the horse a little too fast, or focusing on monetizing over how to serve in their products. So in that sense, you know, there can be a little bit more maturity in the ecosystem there, but trying to do it in a way that's not stifling innovation is something that I'm not equipped to answer, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted, to exactly, that was my thought, because so you got the wrong people here to ask this question. This is my main point, because we are the innovators and we actually hate the regulators. However, I agree, and it's a challenging question for us. If I would be to address this question, I'm looking at, of course, the regulators are looking at the risk, and Michael very well has pointed to that. Yes, because we do not know. Maybe many of them do not know what they are investing in, or and so on and so forth. However, I believe that the blockchain technology, as Pierre-Alain was mentioning with the DAO, has also the possibility and the power of, I don't want to say eliminating completely, but eliminating the human factor in a sense. Because, for example, there's a smart contract that can be used. For example, if I give credit to you and you're going to use it and want to not pay me back, I can make sure through the collateral in your wallet that I'm going to be paid somehow automatically through the smart contract. And that is enabling a lot of things which the current banking system is trying to enable, but much more cumbersome and much more costly. So I think we can embed good rules in this sort of DAOs, so we can automatically, release or minimize the risk when we start an endeavor in the emerging markets. And it is up to the technology, of course, but also to the availability of technology, as it was mentioned before. So it can become a chain of challenges if you don't have internet, for example. However, if you have everything with smart contracts, once we get that DAO dream, as I mentioned initially, before the DAO, then I think many things can be resolved and risk minimized, and then streamline the processes so we can avoid that regulatory burden, which all of us entrepreneurs and innovators are always suffering from. And I know that also Charles Hoskinson is fighting. Now it was announced that he is going to testify in the US Congress exactly on that.
Well, speaking of emerging markets, and obviously the broader promise of blockchain tech as the panel has defined it throughout the conversation, to what extent, obviously the crypto industry is witnessing, a fairly big market crash. Some of the biggest crypto assets are down well over 50% in the last 6 or 7 months or so. To what degree is innovation in the blockchain industry, and we always hear of developers building, to what degree is that building process fundamentally tied, in the industry itself, fundamentally tied to the performance of crypto assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum that have been sitting deeply in the red for the last few months? How about we start? Let's stick with you, Mihaela, for this one.
Yes, and this is a very dear question to me, especially as strategic impact leader. And Charles Hoskinson is, always sending this message as well. We are not concerned at all, at least at input output. We are not concerned at all with the market. If I'm concerned with the market, then I am concerned that actually that is a mechanism to churn those who are there to reach moon. We are here to make people's lives better. And once we focus on the applications, the rest will come in due course. If we have the right technology, the best technology, and we are syncing our technology, our focus is not on the market. Our focus is on the desire to improve things. Yes, and there are so many applications. Yeah, we give identities to people who actually do not have identities, like the Rohingya population. Who cares about the markets when we give identities to people who are born stateless? Yes, I mean, this is amazing. The International Tribunal is now judging, the genocide against the Rohingya and is going to adjudicate. We give birth certificates to children, orphan children who are born also without identities. So we create these counterfeit products for the pharma industry and others. We are about to release cash transactions that enable the Ukraine diaspora, to help inside the country and Afghanistan and so on and so forth. So who cares about the market? This is my answer.
Good stuff. Michael, how about we circle back to you?
Yeah, I think, trying to approach it from a different angle, a lot of people do find the allure and see like, oh yeah, like there's a lot of investment opportunity, or they see like the market's going up, so people get involved into the crypto space because of that. But and you might see that and want to start building on top of it. But it doesn't really matter where you came, whether it's from price or speculation or interest in the technology. The important part is that you came and you started building, and once you start building, you start to realize like the technology is what's important, and it doesn't matter after that. It becomes more about the tech and what it can do for people, and you start having a clear vision of what you're solving, and then you start to realize it has very little to do with the price, which is very reassuring, right? Because it is a very volatile market. But if you remember like why you came and what you're solving, the price has very little to do with it. The only thing that maybe you can argue is that with the crypto crash, there's a lot of those people might be the users, and some of the users are going away, right? So you're building a platform, and the users may be going down. But I would argue that if the crypto users are your only demographic, then that's a separate problem, because you shouldn't be just targeting crypto users. You should be going after people that don't know anything about crypto and making it really easy for them, right? So.
And I would say, just to take on from here, because I don't call those users who are going away. They are those who are in to enrich themselves. But the users, the real users, are, let's say, the Rohingya people, 5 million people who are stateless, who are going to use those identities on Cardano. So we are onboarding users through the use cases. And that's the adoption. The true adoption is not necessarily through buying the coin just to get rich. It is to use it to change people's lives, and that means impact. That is about the theory of change. So once it is used in the right way, problem solved.
Thanks for that. Pierre, any final thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think for me, it's a bit similar sometimes to what's happening on the stock market, where there is a big decorrelation between the fundamental values of the company and the prices that are listed. Because as you might know, the markets are more driven by psychological aspects rather than the fundamental values of the company. However, if you're long-term oriented and the companies are healthy and have a proper business model and a real whatever value that they're providing, I think in the long term, it's a good investment. I see the same for I would say blockchain in general. I think if the underlying assets are providing a real value for within their ecosystem, basically whatever it is, I think in the long term, despite the volatility of the prices, I think we should not be concerned about it. Obviously, for the users, that has a big issue. I'm having in mind, for example, as you might know, Nigeria was one of the leading country per capita for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency adoption. One of the reasons is that the volatility of the naira was a big concern, and so they were trying to find a way to store the value, as well as the control of capital from the government made it difficult for them to basically have international exchange. And that's why crypto was a very interesting tool, basically, to solve these two issues. Obviously, if you use it to store value, when the price are 50% down, that's a big concern for you. So in that sense, for the users, I think they need to be very careful and not necessarily take that as a way to store value, unless maybe they are extremely long-term oriented. And like I said, they maybe understand also all the context and the value provided by the tokens that they are buying. So yeah, so I think this would be my point of view here.
Good stuff. Thank you, Pierre. We have about 15 minutes left, so I'm just going to open up some questions from the audience. I'll just read them out as they come in. We have one question here from Tiva. How do speakers feel about communities that have full transparency in terms of contributors and transactions? And how would you like to interact with these communities? How about we start with Mihaela?
I'm not sure I really understood the question. So can you just repeat it? So communities which have full transparency, like radical transparency?
Yeah, full transparency in terms of contributors and transactions. How would you like to interact with these communities?
I mean, this is what I want. Absolutely. And I will give you an example, another example where I think that DAOs and the smart contract, this is my dream, yes. Because this full transparency requires honesty. And there is a book by Don Tapscott called Radical Transparency. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, yes, why not be transparent? Of course, it's my right to not be transparent and to keep some things to myself, yes. However, I completely am for those kind of communities. And the example is the smart contract in full transparency, which enables the automatic calculation of taxes, elimination of the tax accountants. That's my dream, because it's absolutely possible. I mean, the taxation system is so complex, so complicated. However, those algorithms can be simply encapsulated in a smart contract. And then I can, whenever I pay for something, or when I'm being paid, and so on and so forth, everything can be done automatically and smoothly and put on blockchain. And here I am, pure. Of course, it may not be that everybody's is on everybody's taste, like how much they earn and so on and so forth. But me personally, I'm all for full transparency, radical transparency, if you want to read that book by Don Tapscott.
Good stuff. Thank you. How about Michael? We turn to you next. Can you hear us, Michael?
You're on mute.
Oh, you missed my insightfulness. No. Yeah, what I was going to say is, yeah, I definitely agree. So anytime you have transparency, it also brings accountability to your platform. So depending on what kind of platform you're talking about, it's really going to enrich your community, whether it's a forum, even for example, if people are familiar with the platform called Reddit or something like that. Transparency into like how decisions are made or things like that, that really just brings improves the platform that you use, no matter how you look at it, because there's going to be more accountability, there's going to be cleaner discourse and things like that. So there's not much not to like there, as what I'd have to say.
Good stuff. Pierre, how about any closing thoughts on that question?
Yes. I think transparency helps to build trust, especially on marketplaces. And the other day I was reading this interesting fact where apparently when people are choosing, let's say, a babysitter for their children, they rather basically choose someone that has been recommended by someone that they know, or someone that is close or in their neighborhood, etc., rather than someone that has necessarily all the qualifications possibly or the education to do it. So that says a lot on how we like to transact with other people. And I think that that's where transparency is very interesting, because that can build trust. Now, how far do you go in that transparency? That's the question. Is it only the name, the background, the whatever relationship? But that's again, it's always this limit, and how far do you want to go? And we know all the issues, of course, of sometimes going too far in sharing too much.
Okay, thank you all for that, those thoughts. I'll read now a question from Megan Warner, who is interested to hear more about the panel's thoughts regarding NFTs, specifically the hype versus the potential to bring concrete impact. How about we circle back to Michael to kick us off now?
Yeah, so NFTs are something that we're actually extremely excited about. In the current form, it's hard to follow because it's in its infancy. So there's going to be a lot of JPEGs and things like that, or profile pictures, and there's a use case for that. But we're really excited about where it can go. So that might be what you're talking about, the hype versus potential to bring. And what we think it can kind of go towards is just not only more utility around the NFTs, but also just being able to bring the idea of NFTs to other things other than art, right? So it could be used for things like tracking ideas, financial properties, whatever it is that you're owning. But the big one for us is the ideas, right? Because ideas can be described as an NFT in some way, and you can start adding rich data around it and things like that. So, with that, you start to have like a whole story along why something is valuable, because you could see the whole ledger and things like that. So, yeah, well, extremely interested to see where it can go and evolve from where we are today.
Good stuff. Pierre, how about we give you second thoughts?
Yeah, I was mentioning that we're trying to work on tokenizing income share agreement, for example, and definitely looking at NFTs as a way to basically have, so that could be similar to whatever, a bond, and that becomes interesting because suddenly you could start trading that it's a new type of security, and you can attach a lot of different things also around this NFT. So obviously, we're not so much into monkeys trading here. We are more around the real kind of impact, and we start seeing some applications like the one I've just mentioned that we are looking into. So it is definitely a hype, of course, like speculation that happened also on crypto currency in general. But we believe that there are true impact applications behind.
Good stuff. Mihaela?
Well, I'm mixed on NFTs. First of all, because I believe that human nature is not evolved enough to separate ownership from greed. And I think NFTs can further fuel this. Yes, especially it's mine, and can do the opposite of sharing. Yes, and generosity. However, used properly, I think NFTs can be very useful as well in impact. It depends on where you are coming from. So from my perspective, I think NFTs can be a very good mechanism to deploy land ownership, even in real life, not only in the metaverse, credentials, and so on and so forth. I mean, really things which we need to easily stamp and again, dismantle bureaucracies in that way. So they can be used as well, like certificates, everything that is necessary to own, like my identity. Yeah, that's fine. But otherwise, so we have to be careful there, with this ownership thing. And of course, that is a maybe different conversation. However, it's related very much to the first question on community and radical transparency. So I think that kind of radical transparency in open communities is fueling rather the sharing and the new economic models of mutual support. And NFTs can actually act against that if we're not careful.
Yeah, I'd like to add just really quickly some thoughts on that. So definitely, I think there's a greed element to it, but I would argue that by providing people a proof of ownership and things like that, people will be actually enabled to collaborate even more so, because they know that the ideas that they propose in open environments like or communities, that they'll be recognized for it, because they can show that they were the owners of that idea. So if you can prove that, then you're going to be much more willing to collaborate with other people. So there's another side to it as well.
Good stuff. Thanks, all. We are nearly out of time. We've got give or take 5 minutes. So I'll just ask a final question from the audience with the username AngoTourOfficial. My question is this: is there a plan to convince governments that are reticent to this technology? How about if we stick broadly to about a minute each or so? Michael, why don't we stick with you?
Again, this is a little outside my wheelhouse, but I think I could say that you don't really have to convince big governments to use it if you give it to start from the bottom and give it to people, because people will be using it, and you can empower upcoming government or people that need the technology, and by them using it, they'll kind of be forced to adopt it in some senses, right? That's kind of the way I see it, because I don't have the same level of credentials as to talk about it from the other side, I guess.
Okay, all good. Mihaela, how about we go to you next?
I agree, and there's to take on from there. Just go to the government with the applications. Wouldn't they want their people to receive the real drugs versus the counterfeit drugs? I'm sure the CDC, the Department of Health in the US, are going to be very happy to use blockchain for that. Go to them with, how we reduce cost, for example, in our procurement processes. How with blockchain we can reduce cost in the supply chain management for the food supply of their people. So I think if we go with these applications that are streamlining processes, even the entrenched bureaucrats who are threatened that their jobs and power will be taken away, which is true, they are going to accept it. I hope so. If not, they will be dislocated.
Okay, and then Pierre, we'll give you final thoughts before I hand back over to Noor.
Yes, so I agree. So there are some very clear applications, I think, but they're the ones that do not have necessarily a big impact on from a political standpoint. So very practical cases that were just mentioned, for example. However, when it comes down to like using it typically to govern even a city or a country, it would be a bit more tricky. And that's where I join Michael in the sense of, I think we start with the people, and people are using it on a daily basis. They are also more used to that kind of thinking, and we do a great work around educating people on this kind of system. I think one day they will also take over some political positions and possibly be much more open. Obviously, it will take time, but I would not go with a top-down approach. I think we'd rather go with a bottom-up, case by case, and slowly people will hopefully adopt it.
And as I mentioned, the citizen science, yes, empower individuals to take action, to keep governments accountable. Completely with you both on this.
Good stuff. Thanks all. We're going to squeeze in just one last question here from Marie. She says, excellent points to measure impact from the end beneficiaries, and she's asking if any of the panelists have any good tips to, I suppose the reading of this question is to enhance impact of the blockchain industry writ large. So we can stick again probably about a minute or so each across the panel. Any tips? How about we start, Mihaela, with you?
I really didn't understand the question. Is to enhance the impact of blockchain in the industry?
Yeah, I think in terms of any good tips in practice, sort of day to day, for folks that are trying to enhance the impact of blockchain technology, what advice and tips would you give?
Just go with the low hanging fruit and show people the advantages of blockchain. If it is about the industry, blockchain can enable so much cost reduction. Just think about the mortgage industry, which is a paper industry. I would start with eliminating paper, because all those transactions can be done simply electronically if you have the Internet of Value. So that would be my approach. Go with the long hanging fruit and show them the advantage.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
How about
same for supply chain? I mean, it's the same. The cost reduction.
Good stuff. Pierre, how about we go to you next?
Yeah, I think you should think about the value for the beneficiaries and giving them the right incentives to participate in the ecosystem. So typically, the advantage of token is that you could possibly give incentives in the forms of tokens to the beneficiaries. These tokens then could be used in a certain ecosystem to get whatever discounts or some other value add, that depending obviously on the applications that you're doing. So I think using rewards is interesting. However, of course, you should be careful about that you make sure that the rewards are real rewards and that the tokens have a real utility afterwards. If they have no utility, obviously that won't work, which is not an easy one to do. But I think reward incentives system can be a good tip in order to implement these kind of systems.
Good stuff. Thanks for that answer. And Michael, you have the chance to give your closing thoughts.
Oh, yeah. So I think probably, put simply, I think you can measure the input of the usage of users and just see and pull from these users and say like, hey, these people are using the product the most. Why don't we just go ask these people what the impact is? Because ultimately they're the end beneficiaries of the blockchain, right? So there's a lot of that data is just inherently tracked in the blockchain. So you can do things like, hey, you can go collect feedback from them, and if they have some governance token, people can vote on what the kind of thoughts that they said. So maybe they provide some feedback or suggestions. People can go in and say like, yeah, I agree with this or don't agree with that. That would be one way to do it.
Good stuff. Well, thanks everyone. I want to finish off by thanking everybody for their time today. We certainly appreciate it. And I'm going to revert back to Noor, who will give us the winners announcement now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott, and thanks to our panelists, and thanks to everyone who asked questions. Sorry if we weren't able to get round to it. Now, the most exciting part of the event, the winners announcement. This year, the Seedstars team sourced 200 blockchain-oriented startups. 52 of them were invited to join the private bootcamp and compete for various prizes. The top 5 startups were battling yesterday at the pitching competition for the name of the global winner of the FTX Cardano Blockchain Challenge 2022. It was a very hard choice for the jury members, but now we are ready to announce the winner. And the winner is Merkle Science. Congratulations. I believe we have Natalie now joining us from Merkle Science to tell us a bit more. Natalie, are you there? Hello. Congratulations. How are you feeling?
Really good. We are incredibly excited. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. I'm sure it's been a very busy few days for you, but congratulations again. And I believe now you'll be telling us a bit more about Merkle Science. So I'll hand over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So hopefully everyone can see my screen, and if so, I'll make a start. So yeah, as Noor said, we are absolutely delighted to have been named the winners of the Financial Times Cardano Blockchain Challenge. I'm Natalie Hall. I'm Director of Marketing for Merkle Science. And I think especially considering the level of innovation and entrepreneurship we've seen from our fellow competitors, and we've had the pleasure of meeting them over the past couple of days. So it's been great to be involved with you all. We're really grateful to have this opportunity to tell you a little bit more about what our company and also what we do. So at Merkle Science, we know that Web3 and its underlying blockchain technology is unlocking new and greater possibilities for our world and for consumers of financial services around the globe. By providing enhanced process efficiencies, more choice and transparency, greater financial inclusion, and better independence for all. However, oftentimes cryptocurrencies and digital assets are still met with skepticism from the general public, from participants in the financial services industry, traditional and otherwise, and lawmakers around the world. So we at Merkle Science are working with stakeholders on all sides to build the infrastructure that will enable the Web3 ecosystem's safe, healthy and compliant growth, as well as drive innovation and adoption across the board. But we really cannot talk about crypto today without acknowledging the real harm caused to the industry and its consumers by market volatility, but more importantly by the underlying drivers, as such as increasingly successful and sophisticated crypto crime, like money laundering, for example, as well as poor risk management and mitigation. And what's more, we spend a lot of time working closely with financial policymakers and regulators around the world. And we know for a fact that they will not allow financial transactions of such value and volume to go unregulated. But more importantly than that, they won't ignore their duty and their mandate to protect consumers in their financial jurisdictions. And what this means is crypto businesses and businesses with crypto exposure are operating in an increasingly regulated and oftentimes enforcement-first environment. So now that I've shared a little bit about the challenges that Merkle Science is helping to solve, what do we do? Our predictive crypto risk and intelligence platform provides Web3 businesses and participants, financial institutions, and law enforcement and government agencies with next generation crypto threat detection, risk mitigation, crypto crime investigation, and compliance solutions. And our compliance first platform encompasses blockchain transaction monitoring, crypto crime investigation, due diligence and reporting, and education. And we really have brought together the best practices from the world of traditional finance, and we've combined them with a new behavior-based approach. And that provides a truly differentiated and impactful offering for our customers. So as well as the right product and the right time, you also need the right team. And Merkle Science was founded in 2008 by Mgronk and Namal. Prior to Merkle Science, Mrigs worked with Luno, which are a crypto currency exchange that I'm sure a lot of you already know. And he helped them expand into Southeast Asia and into Africa. But of course, he, as a member of a crypto exchange, experienced many of the same challenges that our clients do today. And the desire for better solutions to the problems that he was facing led to the creation of Merkle Science. Namal is a fraud scientist and machine learning expert, so very much the technical brains behind the operation. And he's leveraged his experiences from some of the world's largest payment providers like PayPal to build our platform. And finally, Fernando, our Chief Revenue Officer, who was formerly the VP of Strategic Accounts at Forta, leads our commercial approach around the world. Merkle Science was born in Singapore. We built our innovation hub in Bangalore, and we've since established offices in London, as you can probably tell, and most recently in New York as well. And we are backed by some of our industry's leading investors. We have around 70 customers across the world, and that includes some exchanges, some custodians, protocols, financial institutions, and law enforcement agencies as well. A lot of names and brands that the people on this call will know really well. And we've experienced 140% growth in the last 4 months. And finally, as we are guests of the Financial Times and Cardano today, I wanted just to talk a little bit about how we can potentially help bring value to the Cardano network and also its participants. So the Merkle Science platform already provides coverage from our blockchain monitoring perspective and our investigations perspective to Cardano's ADA token. In addition, there is huge benefit for potential partnership to help enhance network participants' ability to identify and mitigate fraud and crypto crime, protect consumers, encourage adoption, and drive innovation and provide education. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please feel free to reach out to me in case you'd like to learn more about what we do, or if you can help in our mission in any way.
Thanks for sharing that, Natalie. It's really great to hear a bit more about Merkle Science and what you are up to. And we'd love to hear a bit more about it. So I'm going to invite Charlie Graham Brown, who's Chief Investment Officer at Seedstars, to explain a bit better, actually, why you were chosen as the winners.
Brilliant. Hi, Noor, and hi, Natalie.
Hello.
Great to see you both.
Great to see you.
Maybe before we jump into a few questions to Natalie, I do want to take a couple of minutes to just, I guess, appreciate and congratulate the other finalists, and maybe just say a few words so everyone knows who they are, what they're doing, and also the great innovation that they've brought to the world. So the first startup that pitched yesterday was MedSaf, who are working to bring down the price and improve transparency in the pharmaceutical supply chain in Africa. They've already reached significant scale and presented to us their innovations in the track and trace and also their financing platform for hospitals and clinics. We then heard from Hashstack Limited, who are making under-collateralized crypto loans a reality. There's such a huge credit gap in emerging markets, so I really hope they're able to close it with their innovation. We then had the founders of Fresh Africa, who are developing a transparent supply chain for exotic fruits, connecting smallholder farmers in Africa to customers in Europe. And again, smallholder farmers are really getting the brunt of, they're doing all the hard work and not reaping the benefits. So I really wish them luck in changing that status quo. And the final startup we had was Snapbrilia. They had launched a decentralized e-learning platform for Web3 developers, mainly driven by bounties and using a sort of mentor-mentee approach, which was quite innovative. And talent is forever a challenge for high growth companies in emerging markets and developed markets, and unemployment persists. So also with them, I really hope they're able to scale this up. Early signs are good and we wish them well. But the jury ultimately selected you, Natalie, and the team from Merkle Science for a number of reasons. Definitely the complementary founding team and your strong traction were factors, but I think ultimately we really bought into the mission. And I think we all we're in agreement that without transparency and prevention of all of the illicit use of cryptocurrencies, as you mentioned in your pitch, the governments, regulators are not going to get fully on board, and crypto will never be fully accepted or reach its potential. That's how we see it anyway, and I think that's where you're headed, and we hope you're going to help solve that. But maybe what I can ask you to start off is, what would be a real life example of how Merkle has led to that acceleration of the adoption of crypto? Maybe with one of the clients you've worked with, on a no-names basis if you prefer, but some real life example I think would go a long way in demonstrating the work you're doing.
Definitely. And so the product that we offer is really fundamental to a lot of our clients being able to achieve regulatory licenses in the jurisdictions that they operate in. So the best example of it is, and there are a number of them, is where we see large exchanges or custodians, crypto businesses who want to get regulated by the regulators in their jurisdiction, and they need to demonstrate best-in-class anti-money laundering and risk management mitigation approaches. So for us, it's really fantastic for us to see when our clients get their regulation, they get their licenses, they're able to trade, they're able to offer their amazing services to so many people in that jurisdiction. And we know we're a part of that story, which is hugely satisfying for us because we all believe in crypto and the benefits that it can bring, but also amazing to see our clients doing so well as well.
Brilliant. So what are the sort of challenges that are keeping you and the team awake at night? What are you guys focused on? And maybe how can the community help? How could Cardano, Seedstars, all the people watching, where could we help? Lend a hand.
Sure. I think scaling is definitely a huge challenge for us. As I mentioned in the pitch, we're kind of at this inflection point where we see a huge amount of regulation coming through, oftentimes an enforcement first approach taken, and that's affecting obviously the prospects and the clients that we work with. So really meeting that need, and you'll see that through the growth traction that we've had, is one of the biggest challenges for us at the team. So whether that is acquiring talent, whether that is acquiring more funding, whether that is improving our technology to ensure that it keeps pace with the ever-evolving crypto regulatory landscape. Those are probably some of the things that are keeping us all up at night.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm sure we can rack our brains and lend a hand on that front. But definitely, to your point on the inflection, that's definitely what the jury also pointed out. I think you guys have reached an incredible milestone and operating in a number of different jurisdictions already. So congrats on onboarding different clients all over the world. What advice would you have for other entrepreneurs launching or working in the Web3 blockchain crypto space?
For sure. So speaking a little bit on behalf of our co-founders who weren't able to be here today, but I think find the right people for sure is so important in our space. And what I love about working at Merkle is we all believe in what we do. We're all committed to helping crypto move forward and become really a pillar of the financial world. And so definitely look for the people that not only can do the job that you need them to do, but are super passionate about it as well, because that's taken us potentially much, much further than we would have done otherwise. And I think also, be bold. Oftentimes we're told, oh, well, there's already a solution for that, or, have confidence in the innovation that you can bring to the table, because I feel like that is so important when you're advocating for not only for your business, but for your customers. And yeah, we'll take you far.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, completely agree on the team part. It's definitely in the early stage investment space what most people put top of mind. And I think the founders of Merkle really had a great balance there of both the sort of crypto background and also the, I guess, more traditional financial space, but also dealing with fraud and illicit transactions in that space. So I think a lot of overlap, and hopefully that'll serve you well. Seems to be so far. You mentioned just then as well the innovations, being bold with those innovations. What is the innovation that you feel you're bringing to the table here or bringing to the market that is just most game changer?
I think for us, it's a behavior-based approach to transaction monitoring and to the way that our clients look at crypto risk. In a world where illicit actors can create thousands of addresses, a day if they so choose, and they can interact using those addresses, and it's very, very difficult for legacy technology to detect risk there. So that leaves a huge space for undetected risk, which is obviously very dangerous both for our clients, but also for their consumers as well. And so taking that behavior-based approach, looking in depth at how addresses behave and how that might otherwise indicate risk, and making sure the compliance teams within the businesses that we work with are aware of those behavioral changes, is really a game changer in the way that crypto risk management is done.
Super. Maybe last question for you, Natalie. How does it feel to be named this global winner? And any final words you want to share with everyone watching?
For sure. We are enormously excited. I haven't actually told the team yet because I didn't want them to say anything before. So I'm going to go back and do that, which will be a really nice thing to be able to do. We are super grateful to have participated, and everyone we've met along the way has been so inspiring, and the diversity of offerings that we've seen in the past few days has been amazing. So I wish everyone the best of luck in their adventures, and I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Super. Thanks so much, Natalie. And
All
good luck.
Sally, thank you. Bye now.
Thanks, Nasli, and thanks, Charlie. And congratulations again. Great. Well, I'm just going to wrap up the day for us. And also, you guys have been so interactive all day, leaving some lovely comments and keeping the energy up really high, which is what we asked for you from the start. So we're really grateful for that. So I'll also be reading some comments from everyone. But first, let me just say thank you to everyone for being involved in our first blockchain challenge as the FT and Seedstars. It has been an incredible few days, and congratulations to everyone who participated, who pitched, who won everything. Congratulations for just being involved and on the incredible work that you're doing. So let me take a look at some of the comments we have here. Marie has said, thank you for presenting briefly the projects of the other finalists. Of course, we wanted to appreciate everyone that has pitched yesterday. Khan has said, congratulations to Merkle Science team and Nasli. Yes, indeed. Christina has said, thanks for organizing the panel. It was very insightful. We love to hear that. Those speakers were incredible. So thank you to them again. Sifas has said, Seedstars are greatly doing already by discovering Africa as emerging markets and banking the unbanked in Africans in capacity building and resource management. Love to hear it, and well done to them. And Charles has said, Dr. Mahalia's passion and purpose is informative and inspiring. I do agree with her points of view 100%. I do as well. I think definitely she helped us keep the energy up today, because you can tell she's very passionate when she speaks. So thank you to Dr. Mahalia. Great. Well, that is the end of the final day. So once again, thank you everyone for taking part. Thanks for watching and following along as well. If you weren't part of the challenge, I know we have quite a few people joining us just for the live to watch the panel discussion and hear about our winning startups. So thanks to anybody as well that tuned in to listen to the content. And we're so excited to see what you make of this moving forward. Of course, these challenges are not just about the few days where we take part, but it's about empowering you, connecting you, and giving you the resources to take it forward. So we're really excited to see what our brilliant startups do within the next year, 5 years. So good luck to you all, and thank you again for everyone who took part.